Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody can hear me. My name is Susan Hinchcliffe. I'm leader of Bradford and also chair of the Transport Committee at West Yorkshire Combined Authority. And you're here about Talking Transport webinar, and we've got a lot to get through this evening. We've got council officers from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, and we've got the five local authority engagement leads, and which are politicians and councillors, and also we've got council officers from those authorities as well to feedback on the individual transport webinars that have been happening all across the region. So we're going to have some presentation first from West Yorkshire Combined Authority, but just whilst we're going through those, just be mindful of Q&As. So you'll be invited at some point to go through some questions and answers, and I'll think of those as you're going through. So we're going to have a presentation on Combined Authority, and then reflections on the in-person events. And then the chat won't be active during the webinar, but there is a Q&A tool, which you'll see, obviously, on your Zoom screen there. And then you can put any questions you've got in that, and those will be managed by the team then for the appropriate moment. So to start with then, you can already see, hopefully now on the screen, we've got a housekeeping slide on there. And we'll post, obviously, a response in the Talking Transport web pages to any questions we can't answer today, but we'll try and go through as many as we can. But we're going to go now on to the presentation that James Nutter, I think, is going to be presenting to us. I'll let him introduce himself because I'm never quite sure what his job title is, but he does transport at West Yorkshire Combined Authority and is going to give us an update on the local transport plan. So, James, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hinchcliffe. And yeah, as Councillor Hinchcliffe said, I'm James Nutter. I'm the lead policy manager for transport strategy in our transport policy team at the Combined Authority. So just a recap on where we are on the development of our new local transport plan. First of all, just a little bit about the region, in case a number of you are less familiar with the sort of size and scale of it. I mean, in short, we are a significant region in UK terms, geographically, demographically, economically. We have a population of just under 2.5 million people and growing. We have a very large economy worth about £60 billion per annum, with some significant sectors in manufacturing, professional financial services, digital, and obviously we want to do a lot more about that. We represent about 3% of the UK's economy. Huge number of jobs, huge number of graduates we produce annually. You'll see we're made up of the 5 West Yorkshire districts there. So in UK terms, we certainly punch our weight, and therefore, transport's role in supporting the ambitions of our leaders is really important in the sort of success of our region. Just a little bit about the local transport plan itself. It is what we call a statutory document. It's something that we have to produce and renew every so often by law. Its purpose is to guide transport decision making and policies and investments across the region, which our leaders make over time. And the responsibility for developing and implementing it is split. It's led by the Combined Authority as the local transport authority, working closely with our partner authorities in Bradford, Calderdale, Kirklees, Leeds and Wakefield, who are also the highways and planning authorities, have a key role in implementing and developing the local transport plan. The last one was produced in 2017, and I'm sure I don't need to explain all the changes that have happened, not just in West Yorkshire, but the UK and the wider world since then. It's time for a fresh one. We have a new set of ambitions, a whole new set of priorities, and our aim is to have a new plan adopted by our leadership in March 2026. And we're going to go out to public consultation on a draft plan in the summer of this year. So a little bit about where we've got to, and we did engage publicly and with stakeholders on a sort of vision and objectives document in the summer of last year. We have a vision for a leading transport network that benefits people, places, and our planet. by embedding sustainable transport choices and enabling the economy to grow. And supporting that vision, we have 4 objectives around the economy, around health and well-being, inclusive growth, and the climate emergency. And then underneath that, we have some what we call network principles, around which all the policies that will emerge from the transport plan will be framed. So I won't run through all of that, but if there's more detail you're after, you're familiar with, you can look at that on our Your Voice website. We'll be happy to talk to people later about that. Building on that, we also have a number of strategic transport priorities that our leaders have already set. You may well be familiar with the new major programme we're promoting as a region on new mass transit system. We have also, through the Mayor, taken the decision to franchise bus services. That decision was taken in March last year, and we want to continue the investment that we've been making great strides on in recent years in our active travel infrastructure, working with the railway and through rail reform to radically improve the rail offer across the region. We see some of that investment now going in the Trans-Pennine route, for example, but we need more, particularly around Bradford and Leeds. But that's not the limit of our ambitions. Also, importantly, we do need to continue to improve and maintain our highways assets and transport assets. It's no good having great ambitions for buses and mass transit if the highways asset they run on, which we drive our cars on, is not being maintained because we can't afford to do so. But also critically, we need to make sure that as a region we have the services that run on our network that people rely on, whether that's bus, mass transit, rail, whatever form it takes. So working together to make sure that we do continue to invest in those services is vital. Just a few key messages from the engagement that we held in the summer on the vision and objectives. That by and large there was strong support for the vision, so we and the objectives and the principles. So we're taking that forwards as a sort of firm foundation for the policies that we will be consulting with you and the public and stakeholders on later on this year. I think probably worth highlighting that people told us that prioritising improvements to public transport was a major importance to them. And issues such as reliability of public transport is something that needs to be improved. The frequency, the quality, the coverage of it, urban and rural, was important. And also making sure that we don't forget, rural places and parts of the population who perhaps don't necessarily always afford to use certain types of public transport, or find it difficult to use. So inclusion was important to people as well. So we're really pleased with the feedback we've had, and we're using that to develop the policies, as I say, we'll be engaging on later this year. So yeah, I've touched on this, I think earlier in terms of the timeframes. So we'll move on, I think, to Tim and Simon, who are going to talk a little bit about regional transport improvements. So, Tim.
Thank you, James. Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Really good to be here. I'm Tim Taylor. I am the Director of Transport Services at the Combined Authority. I'm just going to talk you through a couple of slides. First one on which is slide 10 on bus franchising. And James, if you could move the slide forward, that'd be great. Fantastic, thank you. James touched on this briefly in his update. For those of you that are not aware, the Mayor took the decision back in March of last year to progress with our franchising scheme across West Yorkshire. What this means is that we will be implementing a new method of operating buses across the entirety of the region, and all of the decisions around how that network is configured will be given to the Combined Authority. At the moment in the deregulated market, the Combined Authority controls only around about 15% of the total bus network. The remaining 85% is delivered by commercial bus operators, and they choose the routes, the frequencies, the fares, and the vehicles that they use across that network. So the franchising implementation process will see us, over a phased period of time, return all of those routes and services to the Combined Authority through contracts with bus operators to deliver services to our standards and to our set of requirements. So there'll be a competitive bid process that will allow bus operators to bid for those packages of work, and that process has already started in earnest. But in terms of the actual contracting arrangements, the first set of contracts go out to procurement in the October of this year, and then there are 3 phases of that activity, with the first of those services coming into effect in March of 2027, the next phase in January of 2028, and the last phase in October of 2028. And by that point, as I say, all buses in West Yorkshire, largely, there may be a few cross-boundary services, but in essence, every bus service, including all of the services that you see out there now, in terms of their current configuration, will be transferred over. There's clearly an awful lot of work to do in terms of the process that we get to that point, and we'll be continuing to obviously engage with yourselves and with elected members across the region to ensure that process is done smoothly. Next slide, please. So again, James mentioned this briefly on his introduction too. I hope everyone's aware, but if you aren't aware, the region is progressing again at pace with its mass transit plans. We have already gone out to consultation last year and consulted on our mass transit, our tram routes that we will prefer to be implemented in terms of their preference across the region. It says on the slide, actually, and when these slides were prepared, it said we plan to share these results in early 2025. In fact, that's going to the Combined Authority next week, and the papers which outline that feedback and results went live today. So please feel free to go and look on the Combined Authority website, and you'll be able to see a copy of the paper that outlines that feedback there. As you can see, we've had significant feedback from members of the public and from organisations, and very positively received, and indeed positively received not just from individuals but from businesses, from education establishments, and also strong support from central government. And in alongside that, as I say, the first section or the first route choice will be later this year, a route between Leeds and Bradford, but the system doesn't end there. That's us then starting to work on further routes across the region as part of the wider mass transit ambitions. That's a very quick whistle-stop tour from me in terms of 2 major schemes across the region. I shall now hand over to Simon Pope, who's the Transport Capital Programme Director for the Combined Authority. He'll take you through a couple of slides on some major capital schemes that we have in train.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, just following on from what Tim said out there, on the rail side of things, we're currently progressing a number of station and line and service improvements in partnership with the rail industry. So just to summarise some of these on a geographical basis, in Calderdale, we've been pushing the case with government on the electrification of the Calder Valley line as a potential follow-on to the works that are currently going on the Transpennine route upgrade, because we think that would help us capitalise on some of the skills and expertise that will be in West Yorkshire on the back of the Transpennine route upgrade. You may be aware we're in advanced stages of developing a new station in Elland. We're looking to get onto site early in 2026 with an 18-month construction programme on that scheme. And Halifax rail station, you may be aware there has been a previous scheme that was paused a couple of years ago on affordability grounds. So we're working with colleagues in Calderdale Council to explore how that scheme might be brought forward and funded in the future. In Bradford, we're pushing the case for a new rail station at Bradford Gateway to try and help unlock some of the regeneration ambitions in Bradford. This is going to have to be really key in terms of how this integrates with our mass transit proposals and our bus proposals. And as part of that, we're in the early stages of thinking about how the long-term future plans for Bradford Interchange, what they might play as part of that perspective. The government committed in the integrated rail plan to electrify the Leeds-Bradford section of the Calder Valley line, and the Network Rail are currently developing a business case to that effect. That's going to be quite key because it will help deliver 12-minute end-to-end journey times between the 2 cities. So we're supporting the development of that scheme, likely linking that into the development of a new station in Bradford, most likely in the early 2030s. In Leeds, you may be aware that the new White Rose station, the construction on that has been paused for a number of months pending a review of the financial position. We're currently working with partners on that in terms of a remobilisation strategy to try and get that scheme back on site and through to completion. Development of a new railway station at Thorpe Park is well advanced. We're currently undertaking ground investigation surveys. with a plan to submit our full business case later this year. In terms of the new proposed railway station at Leeds Bradford Airport Parkway, we're dealing with some industry cost pressures on this scheme at the moment, so we're working with our partners to try and take a closer look at the project and how that might be affordable. We recognise that it's of strategic importance for the station in the context of both the airport, but also the potential employment site in that location. But it is a challenging scheme to deliver, both in terms of affordability, but if you know the site, it is quite a difficult site to work within, and there are some challenges around how we're going to deliver the required outputs of that scheme. So we're continuing to work with partners at Leeds City Council and in the rail industry to establish the best way forward. We're also looking at various options to increase the capacity at Leeds Station, some of which are committed in the short term. So we're looking at lengthening the platforms 17, for example, but others where we're looking at longer term options with other partners in terms of what shape they may take. In Kirklees, I think the main sort of thing to highlight is the Transpennine route upgrade, where delivery is on track at the moment. So the Huddersfield Leeds to Church Fenton section is due to complete in late 2030, with the section from Huddersfield through to Stalybridge to follow. Just to be aware, there is likely to be some significant disruption later in this year, particularly around Huddersfield Station from August, as the works move to the next stage of development. On the Penistone line, Kirklees Council and ourselves have been awarded levelling up funding to improve services between Huddersfield and Barnsley. They're currently wrestling with some cost challenges around that scheme, so we're working closely with our colleagues at Kirklees Council to understand how that scheme can be taken forward. And finally, just in Wakefield, and specifically the network around the 5 towns, we're working again with industry partners, looking at various incremental improvements that can build upon the recent Huddersfield and Manchester to York service that's been introduced in that area. Next slide, please. So just in terms of on the bus station side of things, so we see this as being particularly important that we upgrade and renew our assets across our bus station estate, particularly given the role that they're going to have in terms of the future franchise bus network that Tim set out. So there are 3 key projects that we're currently developing at the moment, and these come on the back of our successful delivery of the Halifax bus station scheme that opened last year. So just taking these in turn, in terms of Huddersfield, we're planning to submit a full business case for this scheme later this year. The scheme includes redevelopment of the bus station itself, but also a new canopy and public realm improvements in front of the bus station that we're developing in partnership with colleagues from Kirklees Council. And this forms a key part of Kirklees Council's blueprint for the regeneration of Huddersfield Town Centre more broadly. In Dewsbury, we secured approval from the Combined Authority in December for release of funding to deliver that scheme. So we recently signed the construction contract, and works are due to start on site with the bus station refurbishment in the spring. And then finally, Heckman White, again, we've been working with colleagues from Kirklees Council to develop a new facility that's going to replace the existing bus hub in the town centre. Works are currently underway, and that's due for completion in January of next year. So looking ahead, we're planning to continue a rolling programme of improvements across our other bus stations estate to ensure that we're providing the standard of customer facilities that are going to be commensurate with the higher quality bus offer we're aspiring to under the franchise network. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much for that. Some good opening presentations there. Now, I know each of the 5 local authorities have been involved in their own consultation events, and those have been led by principal councillors who are in charge of bus and transport engagement for their area. So there's 5 of those, there's 5 local authorities. And in each of those areas, you have one councillor who's responsible for bringing people together and who sits on the West Yorkshire Transport Committee and can obviously provide those views there. So each of those councillors is now going to present on feedback from their event that they held earlier this year. And the first one of those is Councillor Caroline Firth from Bradford. So Councillor Firth, do you want to come on?
Yep. Hi, thank you, Chair. So last month we had an engagement event. It was at Carla Sangam in the centre of Bradford. And the way we approached it was we had roundtables. We had 3 roundtables discussing bus, rail and active travel. And then we had presentations from WICA that you've just heard, and then a presentation from Bradford Council about Southern Gateway. So I'll just touch upon the feedback that we did get from the discussion groups first. So we asked people what they thought was working well and what could be improved. And there was some really lively discussion. So around bus, people said that they thought, obviously, the mayor's fares that had been brought in, the fixed pricing, were excellent, particularly in Keighley, where mayor's fares were £1. That small compact town bus networks are working well. They've seen that accessibility is improved, and that the app with live tracking is really appreciated, but reliability could be improved, and the buses are clean and comfortable. In terms of what could be improved on buses, I think we would all agree: frequency, reliability and punctuality. Also the real-time information and accuracy of that information at bus stops that have the tickers at the top. Cross-boundary services, where WICA really comes into its own, where we can work together as teams and work on those issues. Impact of congestion and driving behaviour, and also integration with rail timetables, and that did come up on the rail discussions as well. On rail, we had discussions around fares are working well, although could be improved around cost. Trains, again, are clean like buses and comfortable. Retention of booking office staff. Now, that was a campaign last year to retain those, and people are pleased that those stayed. And reliability as well. Now, what could be improved? People said tickets are still too complicated, still too costly. Station facilities and conditions need improving at some stations, and also, as per buses, reliability, punctuality and frequency of services as well. One thing that did come up for both bus and trains was cycle room to take your bicycles on both of those. That was a really interesting discussion with the operators who were there, and that is something that WICA's taken away, as well as the council as well. In active travel, towpath improvements have been really, really appreciated. Traffic calming measures as well, and particularly active travel neighbourhoods and safer neighbourhood schemes were really praised. And improvements in the city centre in Bradford around pedestrian routes, which, if you've been there recently, they're really looking fantastic. In terms of improvements, people wanted more cycle lanes and segregation from cars and lorries, and something doing about pavement parking, congestion, speeding and driving behaviour. So things that we probably knew about already, but some really, really good ideas about how the things could be improved. Now, moving on to Southern Gateway, you'll see from the slide, which is slide 15, there is a bit of a map as to where this idea would be situated. So it's an idea at the moment, it's a strategy. We've got a bit of a way to go, but it'll be one of the biggest regeneration sites in the UK. It's densely populated, and it includes Leeds Road, which is going to feature really heavily in the City of Culture because it's a really buzzing upcoming area, as is Manchester Road. So they would be expanding into the Southern Gateway regeneration site. It'd develop an entirely new district of the city as well, and it'd include new rail and tram infrastructure with high quality office space, commercial and housing developments as well, with green spaces, which is really important to make sure that we've got a sustainable and future-proof district. Now, at the moment, anyone who has travelled in Bradford will know that the terminus, that the station is a through line, so that needs improving for connectivity around the country. We've got ageing infrastructure, and as we've already said, journey times, frequency and resilience need to improve. So all these things are holding back investment in the district, but mass transit, the route options for that are a real benefit for this, to open up that area for regeneration, and also for infrastructure into making it into connectivity into bus and rail as well. So the plan includes a connection from the interchange railway station to Bradford Forster Square railway station, which at the moment you will know is a problem. So in terms of next steps, we've had campaigns running for some time now. The council's had some success in securing support from a wide range of stakeholders, and the Department for Transport is now committed to helping develop a business case so we can present that to the government to try and obtain a way forward, which we're hoping will really kickstart this year. But it would be government funding to move these plans forward. So we need to go to government to put these plans forward to them to try and get the funding. So as the options and ideas develop, we will be consulting with residents and partners as well to make sure that we can get everyone's feedback and really capitalise on this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Firth. Moving on now to Calderdale, which we have a representative, Councillor Katie Kimber. Councillor Kimber, are you online?
I am. Thank you very much. Can you hear me okay? I'm struggling with a slightly poor signal.
Can hear you loud and clear from my point of view, Councillor Kimber.
Brilliant, thank you. So Councillor Kimber from Calderdale Council, and I'm the Transport Lead for Calderdale. So in our talking transport sessions, it provided us with valuable insights into the transport challenges experienced by our community. While it's evident that commendable work is already being carried out at both district and combined authority levels, it's important that we continue to push for a transport system that is not only accessible and affordable, but also sustainable for everyone, regardless of their background or needs. The session was really helpful in fostering a platform where we can collectively identify and share those local transport issues, highlight good practices and explore potential areas for improvement. One of the most pressing concerns that emerged from the discussions at our session was the bus services, which it was very clear that are a lifeline for many residents who rely on them for daily commutes, errands and social activities. We had conversations around the bus stations, which shed light on specific areas that require attention and improvement. This continuous dialogue and engagement helps us to understand and address the evolving needs of our community. We talked about bus franchising, which obviously presents an opportunity to bring about significant enhancements to our bus services. However, it's crucial that we implement interim measures to boost patronage and public confidence in the existing bus network that we have. We hope the transition in the future will have results in optimal outcomes for all. On rail, we had some thoughts around the Bradford-Huddersfield rail link, and would that provide some journey benefits for passengers on the Calder Valley line. We also had our active Calderdale team who are driving change by actively working to create a safer and more accessible environment for active travel. We can encourage healthier and more sustainable lifestyle choices, reduce traffic congestion and improve air quality for everyone. These efforts align with our broader vision for a sustainable and integrated transport system that benefits our entire community. Moving forward, the valuable insights that we glean from the session will guide our Calderdale transport strategy future priorities. And with collaboration and actively listening to the voices of those directly affected by transport issues and working hand in hand with all stakeholders, we can achieve a transport system that is not only inclusive and efficient, but also fit for the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kimber. So next we have Kirklees, Councillor Matthew McLaughlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
I'm here, Chair. Yes, thank you very much. Councillor Matthew McLaughlin, Transport Engagement Lead for Kirklees. So Kirklees' first Talking Transport Engagement Forum happened in Huddersfield on the 16th of January. And before I begin, I'd like to thank the officers from the Combined Authority and from Kirklees for the work they put into putting the engagement forums on and answering questions and making sure everything ran smoothly. I'd like to also thank Councillor Moses Crook, our portfolio holder, for being on the panel, and the bus and train operators for also turning up to share their insights, which was all very valuable. So I'll take you through what we discussed at our transport forum first, and then go through some of the key points of feedback which were coming from the people who attended. So, as with all the others, I think we had a presentation from the Combined Authority on the local transport plan, which we have just heard. So I won't labour that point, but we did put particular emphasis on the very welcome investments coming to Huddersfield, Dewsbury, and Hetman White bus stations, which are going to. Huddersfield is West Yorkshire's busiest bus station, so that investment is going to make a massive difference and hopefully kickstart some growth in our town centre alongside our own blueprint plans. The key presentation from a Kirklees point of view was an introduction to our own transport strategy, which is currently being developed and will go out to consultation next month. The idea very much is for our own local transport strategy to fit hand in glove with the local transport plan from the Combined Authority. There's absolutely no point the two strategies being at cross purposes to each other and not working in absolute lockstep. So we shared our vision in Kirklees, which is for travel to be sustainable, healthy, and accessible for all, creating thriving places and connecting communities. 5 objectives, which you'll hopefully be able to see on the slide on the screen. First is prioritising economic growth, attracting investment while increasing opportunities and life chances for all, improving health and well-being, supporting safe and active lives for our communities, protecting the environment with a transport network that is carbon net zero, transform public transport that strengthens links within the district and beyond, and then finally, inclusive places with better connections which are accessible and affordable for everybody. Beneath those objectives, you've got various policy themes around active travel, safe and active places, travel demand management, public transport, multimodal interchange, freight, efficient network management, and alternative fuel vehicles, all things which need to work together to deliver that cleaner, sustainable and reliable network. And then the final presentation, much more briefly, was on our Kirklees' active travel position statement, which was a statement to clarify the council administration support for the development and implementation of active travel schemes to achieve a safer, more inclusive and more sustainable transport network with more travel options for all. As you can see on the slide, the future ambitions that this statement was supposed to lead to were to improve active travel offer by providing more pedestrian priority, developing, delivering and maintaining a quality joined up network of safe walking and cycling infrastructure and traffic-free routes, reduce rat running and make streets around schools safer, rebalance public realm and road spaces towards sustainable models, and support communities with advice and training on travel and on road safety. Once we'd got through all of those presentations, we opened it up to a forum. We had a sort of panel audience format, but we did our best to make sure that everybody was heard. And at the end, I think everybody was, which was a real achievement. Key messages that came from members of the public, we've heard some of them already, which is not surprising. There are common themes across all of West Yorkshire. Key one, improving the reliability of public transport, especially the bus network, is absolutely key to improving people's experiences and rebuilding levels of patronage to create a more sustainable network. The problem of ghost buses, that's live information that isn't live nor information, it turns out, when a bus is due to come and then doesn't turn up, and the need to improve live tracking, which is something that technology can definitely help us deliver. The cuts to bus services and route changes are increasingly leaving more and more communities and people behind, particularly in rural areas. Some of that will be addressed with the franchising model, reintroducing a wider bus network, hopefully when that comes in. And there was particular emphasis put on the need to make sure that the rural parts of West Yorkshire and Kirklees are connected with each other as much as they are with the local or indeed the regional metropole, because quite a lot of people's lives don't necessarily mean they live in a village and they commute to Huddersfield or to Wakefield or to Leeds, but they might live in a village and go and work in another village, or they might have to cross the hills rather than just go down the valleys towards the big town. That was something that the panel heard and has definitely taken on board. There was an appetite to see mass transit come in and for it to connect all parts of West Yorkshire, including Kirklees, which is a mighty ambition, but something that I know the Mayor has close to her heart. There was a call for small local bus operators to be given consideration and not overlooked by the franchising process. There's a particular part of Kirklees where a very local bus operator stepped in and really saved the day a few years ago when local services were cut by operators, and locals are keen to not see those services lost just because those improvements happened since the decision was made to franchise. And finally, pavement and inconsiderate parking was brought up by quite a lot of people, causing obstruction to active travel, but also to public transport itself. Cars have gotten bigger, and roads. There is a need to reprioritise road space if we're going to create a travel network which is accessible but also reliable. There's very much more besides, which I could have brought up, but that'll do me for now, Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor McLaughlin, for that good rundown of issues being raised. Good look at Kirklees there. So next is Leeds. Councillor Annie Maloney. Councillor Maloney, are you online? Oh, lovely. Thank you.
I'm here. Thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. I won't speak for too long, so I've got quite a cough, and no one needs to hear that down their headphones. But I'm Councillor Annie Maloney, Transport Engagement Lead for Leeds City Council. We had our first forum about 3 weeks ago at Leeds Civic Hall in the evening, late afternoon, evening. So we did have, because of the timing, I think we did have a very strong, we had a lot of people in attendance, so it did feel a very engaging event. So we also did it a sort of theatre presentation style, with Leeds City Council officers and the Combined Authority officers giving a presentation each. So with the, I won't go through the Combined Authority one, but with Leeds, it was very much around the aim for Leeds to be a city where you don't need to own a car to get around the city. So a lot of that, it brings in the sustainability that the other authorities have spoken about as well as not just public transport, but also cycling, pedestrian routes. So we had a really good base for where then questions came from with our Q&A. Because of how quick we got through the presentations, we had an extra long Q&A session. So we got around people twice or three times. So it was definitely very active conversation going on in the room, which was overall really positive. So with the questions mainly coming from the lead side of the presentations, we did speak a lot about the cycle, pedestrian and public transport routes, and the idea of not needing a car in Leeds, which came with both positive and negative kind of responses from the room, but a lot of it was overall very positive. When we look at sort of the streets for all, I think that's mentioned on the slide there, and also the Holbeck connector and outside the station, if anyone's been to Leeds station recently, the look and the feel of the city is starting to feel different. When I think one of the things mentioned was, if you've been to Leeds over Christmas, how the Christmas markets were a big part of that, and how the not having cars on the road does impact the way our city moves. In the room, we also had a lot of operators, which meant, again, the questions asked about actual services went to the panel first and then over to the operators. So we did have a very big scene setting for all of that, which was, I think, really useful and really informative for everyone in the room. But when it did come to transport and public transport, it was, like we've all said, it was about that reliability and the trust in the service. And that if, as a city, we're saying we don't need to have a car, then again, the only way to get out of that car is to get a reliable service. So I think having both officers and the operators there were some really good positive conversations, and it felt very optimistic about what we are doing in Leeds and what the Combined Authority are also doing with us here in Leeds. I can feel my voice starting to go, so I will leave it there, Chair, but happy to pick up on anything when we go later on with questions. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Maloney. That's really good. It sounds like you had a very lively event there in Leeds. Last but not least is Councillor Matthew Morley from Wakefield, who is actually the Cabinet Member for Transport in Wakefield. Grateful for you coming on to this call, Councillor Morley. Are you ready there to come online?
We're always ready in Wakefield, Councillor Hinchcliffe. You should know that, to crack on. This is going to be a bit of a double act between myself and my Strategic Highways Manager, Martin Barnes, who will talk about how we are maintaining our roads, safety issues, and some of our active travel schemes we've got going on in the Wakefield district. But just to give a bit of feedback from the Talking Transport that we held on the 5th of February in Wakefield, really well attended. Great to see so many members of the public there, but all coming with the same theme, which I'm sure any colleagues on the Transport Committee are not surprised to hear, that it was buses in Wakefield, the woeful state of them, the lack of buses, cancellations and everything else that's going on with them. One thing that really came to the forefront that we've talked about before is school services. They're being amalgamated. It's taking the kids to get what should be a 15-minute drive, sometimes well over an hour to get to their school on a morning. So a lot of that was raised. Wonderful to have Arriva there, and reassured that things can only get better, as they kept telling us in the meeting. So, but it was thankful for the officers from the Combined Authority who helped us arrange the event, and we'll be hosting another one later on this year. With that, can I fetch Martin Barnes in now, our Street Highways Manager, who can just talk about some of our active travel schemes, our maintenance, and our safety that we do with our roads.
Thank you, Matthew. Yes, we are doing it slightly differently, but I thought, given that it's fairly similar in the sort of feedback that we've all had around bus services and in Wakefield, it's fair to say we're looking at conversations around restoration of our services. But it's also worth noting the type of work that we do with the funding that we have available and we're allocated, because that's where our money in the future, the local transport plan, will lend itself towards that. So in terms of the money that we do have, our in the next 2 years, £19 million of city region sustainable travel settlement monies in Wakefield. This is the money that our residents, through surveys by the Combined Authority and nationally, have prioritised our work to have a well-maintained and safe network. This work will cover footway, carriageway resurfacing, bridge maintenance, traffic signals, highway drainage, public rights of way, and road safety, as we're all committed to the Vision Zero approach. This is within the LTP document that's being taken forward by the Combined Authority, and it's one that says that all road fatalities are unacceptable and avoidable. So that's where our road safety, safe roads element of money is looking for. But that's only a part of what we do. Our money does also move towards the more major project work, and on there we can see that we have 3 transforming city schemes. These are our corridors that run through districts as well. We have one on the A61, one on the A639, and one in Wakefield City Centre, where we're promoting modal shift and enforcement of moving traffic. The work that we're doing on West Yorkshire Transport Fund on the A60 on Doncaster Road is predominantly to look at partly congestion, partly road safety. Levelling Up Fund is something else that we have, and that's on Park Road at Pontefract. For those that might or don't know, that's outside the horse, the racing sort of area, and that really will be to bring in some cycling elements. Streets for People and Horsefair in Pontefract is road reallocation. I'll touch on road reallocation in a minute, but that's to try and bring better sort of bus service area to the district. Active travel is all about cycle and people, sort of active travel and cycling and walking. Of course, the major projects in there, and it's something worth noting, they all have to compete for funding and road space with many stakeholders. Everybody, they all have justifiable cases, buses, cycle, pedestrians. In Wakefield, we're even looking to support our horse riding communities in the southeast of the district with schemes, and also to look at the accessibility for all. But it is worth noting that all of that really does need to be a balance. We only really have, and going forward, a footprint that we can work with. But when we come to our schemes, it is about understanding and supporting and supporting our stakeholders and our residents. The photo on that slide is one to put, is where there will be a new pedestrian and cycle bridge. We want to connect communities. It's needed in there to support a 1.5 kilometre segregated and shared cycle route that will lead itself into Castleford and also the Ferry Fryston area. So that's something that we've got in the pipeline to support those those stakeholders. And finally, it's important that also that all of our works and our schemes moving forward support the wider council objectives. For example, we do have to look towards growth and economy. Our regeneration colleagues have a number of major projects within Wakefield. And of course, we also need to start looking at how we will continue to work with our district partners and the Combined Authority, because that's the way that we'll deliver success. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And you will be delighted to know we are absolutely on time, which I'm very pleased about. So thank you very much, everybody, for your cooperation. So we're now into Q&As, and helpfully people, as we've been going through that, have been putting some Q&As in there, and some good questions coming up there. We've obviously focused a lot on buses, inevitably, transport in terms of train, mass transit went through in the presentations, but active travel that has come up quite a bit in the Q&As. In terms of safely lit routes around stations. It's all right for the station itself, rail station to be a good facility, but then if you want to get there or and get a cycle away or walk away from that, how do you do that if it's not well lit? Spen Valley Greenway has come up. Obviously, that's how do we maintain active walking and cycling and maintain those routes? And then Dewsbury Rail Station and integration with other modes of transport as well as active travel. So I wondered if perhaps Simon, do you want to do something about the rail stations and safely lit routes around those, and what our consideration is when planning these things, and if we can improve what's there?
So yeah, absolutely recognise some of the challenges with some of our rail stations and accessibility to them. We are looking at what we can try and do to encourage safe and sustainable access. So we do have a programme of rail accessibility improvements, small scale improvements that are underway with Northern to try and improve the facilities for people who are choosing to access rail stations sustainably. So things like safe cycle storage facilities, etc. One of the new stations I mentioned, Ellen Station, that is actually, as well as the station itself, it does include quite a significant access package to try and improve accessibility to the station from the town centre. So that includes a number of new bridges over the River and Canal. So it is something we're very much aware of, and we're trying to work with partners to identify, I suppose, how we prioritise that investment to improve that accessibility for pedestrians and cyclists.
There's a specific question around Dewsbury Rail Station, saying it's very good, but then what's the connection to the bus station to get home in a timely manner, of course, as well, to be used other modes of transport? I don't know if perhaps that's a question for Kirklees there.
We got a councillor from Kirklees who wants to.
Got a councillor, but we may not have an officer from Kirklees, so.
Yeah, so could you just repeat that? Sorry.
Sorry, just about Dewsbury Rail Station, and it's really good, but how the connection to bus station to get you home in a timely manner, because it's the integration, isn't it, really? I don't know if that's something that was discussed or debated already in Kirklees.
No, it was. Well, it's formed part of our transport strategy, which I talked about earlier. That'll be the multimodal interface, which we need to come up with a better name for. But it's basically the idea that of how do you get these different forms of public transport to connect with each other so seamlessly, like, let's all say it together, like it does in London, up here in the north as well. We deserve the same. The hope is that the bus franchising model, when it comes in, will restore quite a lot of the network we've lost since the decision was made to introduce bus franchising, and we can rebuild trust, rebuild networks, rebuild patronage, and therefore expand the network and make it more reliable and more connective across West Yorkshire. I know that it's something all of us are working really hard on, because it really is the key to getting this right.
And active travel as well, just going back to that, it's trying to keep routes clear as well, isn't it? So all the new cycle lanes that are going in, all the things like Spen Valley Greenway was mentioned in the Q&As. Is that something we've considered from a maintenance point? And obviously Simon's come back on camera, or Rashid wants to sort of say what the considerations are there.
Well, I'll just go back to the first point, Councillor Hinchcliffe, is the integrated system. We are very keen about that, and we think that's the solution to us going forward. So we are doing a lot of work in the Dewsbury Town Centre, and certainly around about walking and cycling, trying to get the two stations connected. We are obviously working with Vic and improving the Dewsbury station. It is hoping, well, some of the advanced works have already started on the Dewsbury station last week, and we'll continue for the next couple of weeks with the full scheme starting around about March. So yeah, we do accept the public members' concerns about connectivity, ensuring that yes, get a train to the Dewsbury station, and then how do you get from between the stations? So yeah, the walking and cycling, we have schemes that will allow that to happen, to progress, and hopefully the works that we're doing on the Dewsbury bus station at the moment will also enhance that. But the bus franchise model is the route forward. That's going to be the solution to these connectivity issues, we believe. So yeah, on the Spenval agreement, we also have a program within Kirklees under TCF program. We are improving the Spenval agreement. Those works have already started. Some of the advanced vegetation clearing works are on site at the moment, and we're going to be hopefully awarding a contract. We're going to look to widen it. We're also going to look to light it to make it safe for all users and for all seasons, certainly around the Christmas period of time. So yeah, we are quite excited about that. We are working with Sustrans. Sustrans, in fact, have already improved another section of the route, which is closer to the Bradford side. So yeah, it's just looking very positive. Yeah, and it's also a challenge in ensuring that we have sufficient funds to maintain it, because that's going to be a key part of the strategy going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Rashid, and thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. I think it is something we've got to consider more and more, isn't it? Active travel routes, how we're going to maintain them, how we're going to light them as well to make sure people feel safe using them. Just going to Tim Taylor, obviously the question came up around loss of bus routes. It was a Dewsbury question in particular, but of course, I'm afraid we have seen that, haven't we, across the region. What more can we do on that? So obviously, I know the Combined Authority from personal experience is having to pick up the bill for a number of routes increasingly. But when we move to franchising, what's the plan for that?
No, thank you, Chair. And you're right. Certainly, COVID as an impact was significant on the region as it was nationally. And what we've seen since then is bus operators cut routes and cut back routes in terms of their frequency, their mileage, and the span of operations. So cutting back early mornings, late evenings, and weekends, and such like. And that continues as a challenge for us even after our franchising decisions taken place. We've been fortunate as a region to receive bus service improvement plan funding, and we're continuing to use that as a means to both enhance services, but also to prop up and protect services that are at risk of further reduction. The challenge we have, and I mentioned this in my opening statement, we only control at the moment around 15% of the total bus network in West Yorkshire. And what we can't do is compel bus operators to behave in a certain way, unfortunately. That's not within our powers as they stand now. What franchising will give us is the powers to make those decisions ourselves, solely as a combined authority, with consultation with districts and with constituents, and to make sure that we design services that meet those needs. And there's questions in the in the Q&A around loss of services to accessing primary care services, services connecting hospitals, and rural areas, and all of those things are symptomatic of us having to deal with a declining market in terms of the way the current deregulated market operates, and indeed that's exactly the reason why the Mayor took the decision last year to franchise. What can we do in the interim? Well, we can continue to prop services up and protect them using the funding that we have at our disposal, and that's exactly what we intend to continue to do. But at the point of franchising, we can then start to look at reinvesting where there are profitable routes, because there are profitable routes. There wouldn't be 85% of the commercial network in existence if there weren't parts of the system that didn't make a profit. And to that end, we can use the money that is currently to the benefit of commercial bus operators and their shareholders to reinvest back into services in our region more generally. So, that is certainly the plan. We have a plan and a baseline, which is the March 24 network, and we will be using that as the means to build out in due course and to reinstate the kinds of services that people are talking about, because that is very much the ambition, is to give people a level of consistent connectivity across the region.
Thanks, Tim. Yeah, I mean, that goes on to connectivity in places as well, doesn't it? Because there's a question here about, there's lots of services are probably not enough actually going into Leeds city centre. But if you want to go across Leeds, and the question is here from Crossgrates to Shadwell Roundhay to Headingley or Horsforth, the services and opportunities to do that are more limited. So again, this requires more investment, doesn't it, really? But as well as the radial routes, can we do the cross routes as well? And again, will franchising, is that an opportunity, or can we, I suppose, team and ladle some investment?
No, indeed, Chair. And at the moment, there are restrictions in the kinds of things that we can pay for operators to run, and where a route might, in part or in whole, currently compete with a commercial service, that prevents us from making those decisions. As I say, that will disappear through franchising, and we will be allowed to make the kinds of decisions you describe. And very much bus networks have evolved over time to do that kind of hub and spoke connectivity and out of major conurbations and city centres and town centres. But we need not be restricted in future in terms of the kinds of journeys people want to make. And as I say, where they might not currently be commercially viable, we have the opportunity to cross-subsidise those kinds of services to allow people to make those kinds of trips. Our decision-making framework will be entirely different to that of a commercial bus operator. What we're not here to do is to make a profit on these services. We're here to make the whole system sustainable and to grow patronage. Ultimately, we want more people using this network.
Exactly. So a more comprehensive network hopefully will build patronage. Paul, so from a Leeds point of view, you'll be more familiar with the route itself. Do you want to say anything in that regard?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Paul Foster, Head of Transport Strategy at the Council here. I think this is a common issue, and one we identified when we were developing our transport strategy is that the evolving nature, post-COVID, commuting at the time, pre then was only 16% of all journeys. And somehow we've got to serve all those other journeys that people do. And these connections between local communities is really important. And so we have identified that as a real priority for us to try and get these higher frequency orbital services to connect up with the existing radial services. And then, and this idea that you only get one bus rather than two to get there, but to do that, you have to have those increased frequencies. And, as everyone said, we hope that franchising offers us the opportunity to do that. We can get into a virtuous circle of growing patronage and therefore reinvesting that in additional services. And that's where we need to be to solve these types of issues. And there is one particularly, I know, a successful service in Leeds that does that sort of hop between services. It also goes through the city centre in terms of the 16 bus, which actually serves lots of local trips. The people who get on it don't go up from one end to the other. There's lots of small journeys in between, and it's how we can get some of those services that maybe don't serve the city centre but do those orbital routes as well.
I mean, all this is all about connectivity, isn't it, really? And somebody just putting on there, if you had services every 10 minutes, then actually that improves the connectivity across all the different modes of transport. So I don't know, Jason, sorry, not Jason, it was Tim, what we can do, or James is on as well, about specifying when it comes to franchising the frequency, or is there anything in that regard? And I think also perhaps keep James on as well about the last mile. Somebody says it's all right having mass transit, trains, bus, but then how do people just get to the local doctor's surgery, which is a mile down the road? So those can cover those two items. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll cover the point about connectivity and coordination, and it's a very valid point. It's really important that we have a level of frequency on those high frequency corridors and connecting and coordinating services that allow people to not have to worry about making connections because they are frequent enough so that is no longer a challenge. But even where those connections aren't necessarily at high frequency, making sure that services operate punctually is really important. And I think everyone would probably recognise, hopefully, that the current network is neither punctual nor reliable in its current guise. And the targets that we have set through our bus alliance in terms of punctuality are not where they would need to be, and operators are operating at in the mid-80s in terms of punctuality of bus services. If buses turn up when you expect them to and they get you to where you want to go on time, then actually that has fulfilled a significant proportion of people's expectations, but that needs to get better. And indeed, the contracts that we will put in place will be, much more robust with operators, because I say we don't control all of it now. But those new contracts under franchising will have, very clear targets and expectations around improvements in that space. I'll pass to James in terms of any thoughts he might have in terms of a policy position on this more generally, but also in terms of that last mile point too.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. Thanks, Councillor Hinchcliffe. Yeah, so I think the point from the question of the person who'd had experience of living and working in Spain and Barcelona and Madrid, is a very pertinent one, because and many of us have seen and experienced what transport, how good transport can be in both in our own country in London, but also in other cities around the world. And it really isn't rocket science. And it's about the things that Tim was just talking about, the frequency of the sort of core services, but then being able to get from your door to wherever it is you want to go, whether that is to the GPs or to your place of work or to see your friend. What we're looking to create here over time is, through this next LTP, is a sort of foundations of that integrated network, which other cities around the world and regions around the world enjoy, so that you can get from A to C via B reliably, quickly, easily, and without necessarily always referring to a timetable. So whether that is you need to get in your car because you're in a rural area, or you take you use your feet, or you cycle, or you take from a local bus stop, whatever it may be, your car share, e-bike, e-scooter, whatever it is, that door-to-door journey, it needs to feel like it's a seamless and realistic choice for people to make, and that's where we're wanting to get to over a period of time through the sort of West Yorkshire partners. Just in terms of broader connectivity, if I may, Councillor Hinchcliffe, I think the one question touched on the sort of investment in the region, particularly in relation to health, and the importance of connectivity to airports, and whether that's sort of Manchester or Leeds or wherever. We do hear quite a bit from businesses about the importance of the quality of transport systems to their decisions as to whether or not they invest in the region. There have been quite a lot of long-standing plans to have improvements between our region and Manchester Airport. We recognise it is the global airport for the north of England. The Transpennine route upgrade will help with that. It's taking time, but it will help with that. We want to get the Calder Valley better linked up, Bradford and Halifax to Manchester Airport as well, but also not forgetting the importance of our local airport. So Simon Pope earlier talked about the airport station business case. We need to make public transport a realistic option to get to and from Leeds Bradford for whether it's visitors, business investors, or indeed holiday makers. So it's on the horizon. It's in the plan. So yeah, I'll leave it there.
Yeah, if transport was all easier and at hand, wouldn't it? And more people would use it, really. That would increase the patronage as well. It's just getting it to that scale, and we obviously not yet there yet. If we can just speak have one of the local authority officers on, just to answer the question about developers. There's a couple of questions about what can we ask developers to do when it comes to active travel and putting walking and cycling around that. Is there something, and there's also a question about Bradford districts and footpaths, whether the developers are allowed to close off footpaths, which I think the probably answer is no. So if there's any officer able to come on, Richard Hollinson from Bradford.
Good evening. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Chair. Yeah, in terms of developers, it'd be the same sort of situation for all parts of West Yorkshire. Through where developments do require planning permission, certainly larger scale developments, then very often we will be talking to them about the policies that we have for planning decision making, such as integrating their scheme with existing rights of way or active travel networks in the area, or asking them to make financial contributions towards improving those, where that's appropriate. And where it's required for the planning permission to be granted. So it's not every time, but most major applications will be considering those aspects when they go through the planning process. There was a specific question about then whether a development can just simply close or stop a footpath, I think was, if I've understood the question correctly. So the answer to that is no. There is a process to follow, and through the Town and Country Planning Act, where public path orders are progressed, they need to be advertised and subject to public comment and objection, and there's a set process for doing that. So All those sorts of changes are subject to public consultation, and the developers can't simply go around stopping them up. There are separate powers to control that sort of activity, and we do have sort of enforcement powers as well. I hope that helps answer the question.
Thank you very much, Richard. Just thinking, there was a few questions about people who are partially sighted or elderly. Obviously, they rely very much on public transport. And how much consideration have we got in the transport plan, James, really, for those groups? And there's specific questions about, people can't just go and pick up their child if they're not sighted, and also about how elderly people use active travel. Obviously for them it's walking or buses, probably other modes of transport might not be open to them. So what consideration have we got around that, James?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Hinchcliffe. Well, first of all, as part of the local transport plan, we have done and we will be doing what we call quality impact assessment as part of the LTP. So that's where we look at different demographics and characteristics to make sure that our plan does provide for the population at large and doesn't leave, for example, elderly people out. And we do recognise that older people or people who have difficulties using different forms of transport, particularly active travel, but if you're partially sighted, you may struggle with public transport. So we do want to invest, and we are investing, but we don't want to do more through this local transport plan to make our transport system more inclusive, so that it isn't as a barrier that it necessarily once was. And we recognise, for example, that the railway, in West Yorkshire is not as accessible as it needs to be in the 21st century. I think we've got about 70 stations altogether in West Yorkshire. I think only about a third of them are fully compliant with the latest disability legislation and standards. So, we as a region and working with the government need to invest more of our collective money in that sort of making sure our system is open for all and usable for all. So yeah, that is a core part of the plan, Councillor Hinchcliffe, and we recognise that it's people need choice. What's right for one person won't necessarily be right for another.
Indeed.
Councillor Hinchcliffe, if I may just say quickly on that, I'd be very happy to have a conversation with the participant, the delegate, on this particular matter. I've had a recent conversation with a gentleman called Ian Mitchell from the Sight Loss Council, and they're very keen to have conversations with the Combined Authority about some of our design decisions, particularly around bus infrastructure, but not exclusively. And we'll be very happy to loop this individual back into that conversation too.
Thank you. Yes, I think the question have put their charity that they work for in the chat there. Just a question on here about park and ride. Obviously, it was pre-pandemic. There was a lot of talk of park and ride. Have we got plans for the rest of the region? Obviously, Leeds, Paul's on there. Paul, you can talk about how your park and ride's doing in Leeds, and then before I go perhaps to the Combined Authority to talk about any other plans.
Yeah, so introduced our first park and ride, I think, in 2014. I remember it well because we had to get it open a week before the Tour de France. So it was just about finished. You couldn't tell the difference. The lights didn't work, but it was summer, so that was a challenge. But ever since then, continued to build and opened the Temple Green site as well later on, both really successful. And then we had COVID and real challenge around how people work now, and so the sort of 5-day-a-week commute became a 2 or 3 day a week, and so we have seen a drop in patronage because of that. Probably recovered to the same levels on those Monday, Tuesday to Thursday, probably. So that's the challenge for it, really, is to ensure that you can continue to grow that. And the thing we're working on strongly now with the operator and the Combined Authorities on how we market it as a leisure trip as well for those people coming in for shopping and at weekends. So we're looking to improve the services and the frequency of the services at those times as well. So I think that's the challenge for delivering park and ride. But what it has done, the real positive story around park and ride, is it allowed us to reduce the number of cleared site car parks there were in Leeds city centre because people had an alternative. and they've now come forward as development, which are providing employment and places for people to live. So there's a benefit in that land use change that you can make in your city centre by providing park and ride, as well as connecting that up for those people who live further out and giving them a sustainable choice to get to the city centre. So yeah, been a success. Challenge at the moment, but we're probably back on track now with continuing to grow those services. I don't know if Tim wants to add anything to that.
No, thank you, Paul. And briefly, and James may want to again comment in terms of the policy position, but certainly in terms of kind of utilisation, you're right, we are seeing growth. So we're back up to about 21,000 trips being made from those 3 sites per week now. Not evenly. The most popular site is Sturton, but still very good levels of demand. And you're right, whilst kind of the midweek is better, we are still seeing good demand on kind of Monday, Friday. We are in the process of looking at enhancements. To your point, there's definitely improvements we can make, and we know where we've done kind of targeted events. So the light nights in Leeds last year, for example, there was, we made a concerted effort both to promote it, but also to integrate that event into Elland Road, and that was really successful too. So there's definite opportunity, and very importantly, also an opportunity through bus franchising to better connect and make connectivity more generally through park and ride, because it's not just bus-based park and ride. We should look at rail stations as well in due course around the role they play for park and ride too. James, I don't know if you wanted to add any more.
Well, I'm just going to flag that, as you said, Tim, we have been, as a region, investing quite heavily in rail park and ride as well as bus park and ride this past few years. So mustn't forget that the railway does form quite an important part of our network there. I think from a broader policy point of view, I think we don't have any more specifics as we speak at the moment. I know certainly district colleagues, will be thinking about, and we'll be thinking about any future of park and ride across the modes, mass transit, bus and rail, as part of our development of the implementation plan of the local transport plans. Probably can say a bit more about that in the coming coming 6 to 9 months, Councillor Hinchcliffe. So no specifics, I'm afraid, but it'll be part of the menu of choices, I think.
Lovely, thank you very much, James. Just moving to Calderdale, a few back questions specifically to Calderdale, I think, is about are there any plans to ensure bus routes in Calderdale link up between the villages, sort of Midgley, Myron, Hebden Bridge? I don't know if Tom Jones or Councillor Kimber want to come on and answer those.
Hello, yeah, it's just myself at this point. Councillor Kimber's had to drop off for the moment. But yes, I'm Tom Jones. I'm a senior transport planner at Calderdale Council. It is certainly something that's really important to us in Calderdale that we see as we move into a franchised future, that the improvement of rural connectivity is something that's a vital consideration with the way that we develop a network going forward. That baseline, that 2024 baseline that was mentioned earlier is really critical, but it is a baseline, and what we would hope and expect, and it's been spoken about already today in terms of the future of the network, that we will be kind of growing and improving that bus provision across the region. Where the motivations for what a post-franchised network is run for and by, and where the removal of profit from that future is a kind of a critical, I guess, central tenet of how things work. We're encouraged by that, and I think for Calderdale it's going to be really important, given that we do have some very particular geography and a number of smaller rural communities that post-franchise network is really focused on making sure that connectivity into those kind of communities is vital. We're very encouraged by the work that is being done by James's team in terms of the LTP and the policy body that will form that rural connectivity is really being highlighted as something that has to be picked up on and improved. So I think that combination of background factors mean that we should into the full life of franchising, and I think we've got some challenges in the shorter term that we need to be realistic about, but certainly franchising is the only opportunity, or at least that improved level of control that we get in a post-franchise future is the only opportunity to start to see that movement into improvement and connectivity to those areas. So yes, it's very important, and we would seek to prioritise making further improvements in that regard. And if any of those, noting that there are quite a few Calderdale specific questions coming out in the chat, would be very happy to make contact with, I think it is a particular person asking, to kind of get into some of the detail of that, if that's called for.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, I mean, I think obviously I've just noted questions about the 537 first bus, and does it 539? I think it was cancelled. So it's just, in communities where it's only hourly, isn't it? It is a massive impact when that bus doesn't run, and obviously that's Calderdale specific here, but I know that's, West Yorkshire includes a lot of rural communities. Bradford, I'm used to saying is 2/3 rural, as a lot of people are very much reliant on public transport. So again, frequency is key, really. Just the question about whether access bus fits into the local transport plan. And James, obviously access bus is an absolute lifeline for many of our elderly residents, and just want to know what our plans are in that regard.
I think the answer to that is yes, Councillor Hinchcliffe, and certainly the types of, we will have policies and therefore interventions proposed as part of the local transport plan that are promoting the services, the sorts of services that Access Bus provides.
Thank you. Yes, so that is something that I know I point people to on a regular basis, and here talking about Leeds Older People's Forum, very important for people that they have access to that. I did see something on here about trains, because we've covered a lot, haven't we, on buses, as you would imagine, but people are also asking about frequency of trains, and that Penistone line, which I know Kirklees Councillor Patterson frequently mentions it in meetings and is very keen to make sure that the investment is made there. But it talks about, are there going to be improvements to the Penistone train line between Huddersfield and Sheffield? And is this frequency of trains? There's only one train per hour. And I say, again, like with buses, if there are cancellations, it makes it undesirable for commuters and they just can't rely on it. Councillor McLaughlin, I know this is something you've been pushing as well about Penistone line.
Yes, thank you. Susan, you're very patient putting up with me bringing it up at every opportunity I possibly can. It's the Penistone line is an issue that is close to my heart. I commuted to university in Sheffield for 4 years on the Penistone line. It takes 2 hours to make a 30-mile journey. Totally unacceptable. And the main problem, as anybody who's ever used it knows, is that for a long way along the track, there's only one line. There aren't two. There used to be two, but it got taken away. Thank you, Dr. Beeching. And that means that you can't run 2 trains an hour because they can't get past each other. So we did put in a bid as an authority to the Levelling Up Fund. The money that has been awarded is not enough to do everything we would like to do, which is redo every station and have that proper second line. But even if we can just get a few passing places and improve the accessibility at those stations, it will be a massive improvement on that line. It is something that that we at Kirklees have absolutely square in our minds and will not stop pushing for until it's done. But it's not delivered until it's delivered. But I think Rashid could come in with some more specifics.
Yeah, so we've got a bid in. It's circa 48 million. It's not to increase the service to 2 trains per hour. It is to maintain the current provision, but it will embed a future improvement to 2 trains per hour. The bid for a 2 trains per hour service is significantly a lot more than what we have currently secured. With the 48 million, our focus is about mobility hubs. It's looking at several stations across that route and looking to provide in the EV charging facility at these stations, car club spaces, park hire, lockers and stuff like that. And also look to improve accessibility. I note some of the comments that have come through, and that's quite true. Some of our stations, and we are looking to improve on that on the bid that we've secured in the Penistone line. So we want to make platforms accessible, improve walking and cycling routes to them. So part of the 48 million is to look to double track, and this is really the focus is to improve, which has already been noted by the member of the public, about reliability and connectivity. So it's looking at improving tracks along the route and looking to make some line speed improvements also. So I believe trains can run from as low as 50 miles per hour, but we're looking to increase on that to about 60 to give that reliability that we want trains to have on that route going forward. And we're also keen to improve connectivity and in terms of fibre broadband along the railway lines. We want to improve the onboard connectivity, and that's something that we're keen to do within that money that we've secured. So that's some of the detail, Councillor Hinchcliffe, that we have plans for moving forward on the Peninsula line. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just going back to Calderdale, we've got Ellen Station. Where will it go? How will it connect it to when it comes online? Do people? What additional services will it be able to provide? Are we that far in our thinking? I suppose Tom Jones is there.
It's seen as being a really important link for Calderdale and for communities in Elland. It links through on the line to via Brighouse. So I think the question was about kind of the connectivity opportunities that are already afforded to communities in Halifax, in Huddersfield. But actually, I think people in Elland have got some distance from that, and Elland is one of our towns which does have some fairly significant issues in terms of deprivation. There's some regenerative opportunity around getting a new station on Elland, and that is a line which there are concerns in terms of the frequency of journeys, and actually some of the conversations that were had in our district level forum certainly did reflect on that. And actually, I think as far as people in South East Calderdale, which is obviously an area where we've got significant areas in terms of economic and housing growth, there is an interest in seeing service improvements on that line. And I think getting a station at Elland can only help the case for seeing an increased perception of importance in the rail industry, such that we do move into a future where in part thanks to the new Elland station, we see more frequency of service provision on that line. Thanks.
Lovely, thank you. We're coming towards the end of the session now. Just popping around, just trying to finish off the last few questions that I might have missed as we're going through. So, Paul, do you want to say anything about workplace parking levy, and then I'll go back to Tim probably for the buses, about how do they decide which bus stops they go to, and that's how do they map a route, I suppose. Paul, I don't know if there's anything to say on that subject. I know it's been talked about quite a lot, isn't it? But I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think obviously we're aware of Nottingham's the only place in the country at the moment that has a workplace parking levy, and it helped them deliver their tram and rail station improvements, among other things. In our transport strategy that we published, we did say this is something we could consider if we're not meeting our targets. So yeah, it's in that box of we're aware of it.
Thank you. And Tim, just around bus routes and who decides what bus stops to stop at, and can we've got an influence over that?
So on the 85% of the network, unfortunately not. That is entirely within the gift of bus operators to make decisions around whether or not they stop at every stop on a route or just limited stops. That is their choice. And as I say, fundamentally, this is another one of the reasons why bus franchising is attractive to us as a region, because it allows us to make those decisions whether we want to implement an express service or whether we want to just have a fully stopping service, and trying to balance the benefits between those two things, because clearly one is a trade-off against the other. But at the moment, like I say, it's not something that we can mandate an operators to do, and much to my frustration, I'm sure amongst many others, it's something that we want to improve through that franchising process.
Lovely, thank you. And then Richard Hollinson, if you're on, just about footpaths again. Have we got something which shows where the footpaths are all networked together? I suppose I said Bradford question, but I suppose it would apply equally to West Yorkshire in terms of encouraging active travel. How do people find out which footpaths are there, which are legal ones that nobody can go across, and if they want to take a walk to a destination, what footpaths are there for them to follow?
Yeah,
I think is the question as well.
Yeah, preservation as well. So I think probably two parts to that. One is where you can find information about something called the definitive map, which all councils should hold that information. You can find that information on Bradford Council's website, or obviously contact our team directly. I would have thought probably the same for most of my colleagues and the West Yorkshire authorities on this call. So there is a map. You can see on that map the different footpaths and some of the status they have. There's various sort of processes for updating that map, which councils are going through. And in terms of are we committed to maintaining that network, then the answer to that is yes. There is a proper process, as I've said earlier, to close or divert paths. There's a public path order process to go through. And there are various sort of rules and criteria for us to take into account for that. So, for example, if a new development is in granted planning permission, but it might need to divert or to move the line of a footpath, but that there is a process for that, and that would be the first ask. So that commitment is there, and most councils reiterate that commitment through the work they do around our local transport plans and strategies as well, because that map of routes is an essential part of our active travel network and ability for people to navigate around, obviously particularly by walking, but also there's bridleways and other things in there as well. So I hope that helps answer the question. But obviously, if there's any specific Bradford points, I'm happy to receive those via the Combined Authority and get back to people directly as well.
Thank you very much, Richard. So I think we've come to the end really of our session. We've been through a whole gamut of questions, quite interesting, insightful questions. So thank you for everybody for posting those. We've gone through, trains, buses in particular, accessibility, active travel, equalities, disabled access. So that's really been quite a rich discussion. So thank you very much for that. And we were asked at the beginning if the slides are available. Jess, they are available. Where will people find them? Jess, are you still there?
Hi, Councillor Hinchcliffe. I beg your pardon. The slides will be available on the Talking Transport page of the Your Voice website from tomorrow morning.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you very much. Obviously, the transport engagement leads will continue to do their work and further sessions will be planned. And thank you very much for your feedback. And we'll continue doing our best for West Yorkshire Transport. So thank you very much for attending this evening. Thank you. All the best. Bye.